Hello, I'm Chalanda Carr. I just became a life coach. Um, I'm coming on here because this is my first time on this platform. I guess I should have looked at my husband because he did a lot of YouTube channels, but he's no longer here with me. So a lot of my story is going to tell you about who I am. But today I just want to give a quick introduction. And like I said, I was married 30 years to a man of God, a pastor, a preacher, whatever you want to call it. I was a pastor's wife, a minister's wife, and for 30 years we served the Lord. We raised three grown children. I have a 28-year-old daughter, a 29-year-old daughter also, and a 26-year-old son. And I have one grandbaby, and she was just 10 days old. She's 3 years old because it's been 2.5, going on 3 years that my husband has been gone. So she's my only granddaughter right now. I have one more that's on the way. By the time you probably see this video, she will be here with the family, or he. But long story short, I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana. I now live in Ohio. But I grew up with a very rough life. My brothers were in gangs. We knew we if we didn't know anything, we knew about fighting and defending ourselves. So as time went on, um, I had different relationships, and I had a boyfriend that passed away after I graduated. We were engaged to get married. I had, shortly after that, I didn't know the Lord, but I was trying to understand that grief back then. And I see that the Lord took me through that. But then I met another young man because I was always, a bounce back girl. And I met this young man, but he was a backslider. I didn't know what a backslider was. One that once served the Lord, but left from walking with the Lord. And I used to literally cry on his shoulder about the other guy that I was engaged to. Long story short, his mom invited us to church, and from there, I ended up giving my life to the Lord, and he ended up coming back to God. But he didn't stay long. He literally asked me to marry him. I was engaged to him, but then he left the Lord again. So now I'm at this church by myself with no family members. I'm the baby in the family. I have an older sister and two brothers in the middle, and then I'm the baby. And so I'm still walking with God, and the Lord is dealing with me, and He's helping me through that process of healing. I'm still sitting next to this young man's mother. I'm still going to the church. The enemy is telling me, "You're dumb. Why are you still going to this church?" And it was because God did something in me. He was healing me. He was helping me. All I did was cry the whole service. And so one day, this young man didn't want to come to church. He was supposed to pick me up. And I remember that phone call because I had to call him and ask him where he was. And he told me he was not coming and that he was hanging out with his one of his cousins. And his cousin was a backslider. So I felt in my spirit, because at this time I was walking with God closely. And I felt in my spirit that he was walking away from God again. And finally, the Lord asked me, I heard this still small voice, and at a tender age. A tender age with the Lord. I could say that because I hadn't been walking with God probably no more than 2 months. But I could hear God clearly, and I heard the Lord ask me, who do you love more, me or him, Chalanda? And it wasn't a hard answer, because what the Lord was helping me through with the other guy, I knew he was real. And I began to take the ring off my finger, and as I was telling him, I said, and by the way, this is my marriage ring of 30 years, and this is my husband's ring. And I still wear them because I really don't want nobody bothering me on the low, and I'm good where I'm at. But you will get to hear that story, but I have to start here. So I literally took the ring off while I was talking to him, and I told him, I can't marry you. And I hung up the phone. And from that day, I began to know God more and more, and know who he is to me now. And I grew in him. I began to learn my gifts in the Lord. I started hanging with the mothers in the church. They were praying one day, and I peeked in the room, and I stayed in that room with them. But I see now that the Lord was using that time to build me up into the office that I carry, and the gifts I carry, and everything that I was going to go through in life. And oh, was it something. So, yes, I basically kept serving the Lord. And one day, the Lord told me, I don't want you dating anyone else in this church, because he knew I was going to bounce back again. So that was 2 engagements, okay? And I said, okay, Lord. He said, I will bring you your husband. He said, I just need you to get caught up in me, and that's it. And I took God serious. I got caught up in him, meaning I started serving him. I started getting on different auxiliaries. I just wanted to know this God that had healed me from 2 broken hearts, because the last one was hard too, only because all these people looking at me now. And the church he went to was a church that held all of the people I graduated with from high school. So growing up with brothers being in gangs, and me fighting all the time, and I'm jumping in the fights with them, and they knew I always stayed suspended from school, because my brothers would always have a fight lined up for me. If they heard anything about any girl talking about me, they would literally have me to fight them after school. So yes, that's the way I lived. So those young people that was at the church knew me from school. In Gary, Indiana, you almost knew everybody, but they knew me, and they watched me, and they knew that this young man backslid. He was born and raised at that church, and they knew him, and they seen him backslide again. So they was wondering, was I going to go out and backslide and be with him? But no, I didn't. And I stayed in the church, and they watched me. And it was hard. It was, the pain I felt. It felt like I took on the pain of that young man dying. Now this is another pain on top of that pain. And it was just like, and I just was like, is this what living for Christ is all about? But I knew he died on the cross, and he suffered for us. So, okay, I guess I can do this. And so I just got busy for the Lord, and that helped me to heal from all of that pain that I was carrying. And of course, he came back later, like 6 months later, with another girl. And of course, the young people watched me again, and I wish I was in a place now that my heart was so into God. So it really didn't matter to me, so to speak. I could care less. I just wanted to see him saved, and I wanted the young lady to be saved. And I just, welcomed him back and everything. So time went on. Like I said, the Lord told me don't date nobody in his church. In other words, he didn't want me messing with none of his brothers and getting involved with nobody. And he wanted to get to know me himself. He wanted me to know him and to not keep trying to find relationships, in me. And so I'm gonna tell you this, and then I'm gonna get off. This was just a introduction, but I was on his auxiliaries, and I meet this young man, and he was one of the ministers in the church, and I loved how he loved God, and we became like the best of friends. And his brothers, our older siblings, he's the baby in his family, but he went to the same high school as me. He knew of me. He knew my siblings, and his older siblings knew each other. Actually, they used to get in trouble with each other. But this young man was a Christian man. He preached at the school on lunch hour. He was an artist. He wore Jesus saved on his jeans. I mean, he really impressed me. And we were two opposites. And he would pick me up for a choir rehearsal and for choir engagements, and we would sit on the phone for hours talking about the Lord. It wasn't nothing else, because I knew what God said. Don't date nobody. I would bring your husband. So I wasn't even looking at him like that. But he was nice looking, don't get me wrong. But I was so in love with the God in him, and I loved everything he was telling me about God. And we would sit on the phone until our alarms went off, because we would fall asleep and it would be time for us to go to work. And during that time, these other brothers were coming to me trying to date me. And I mean, to take me on lunch and take me to dinner. And I would stand there right in front of them and say, Lord, is this my husband? And the Lord would say, no. And I would tell the brother, and it happened 5 times to different brothers. And I would tell the brother, no, I cannot date you. The Lord said, you're not my husband. So that happened like 5 times. And then all of a sudden, the young man that I was learning so much from one day said he liked me. And now we on the same auxiliaries together. We're serving the Lord on so many platforms together. And it was just beautiful having a spiritual brother to talk to about the Lord that is seasoned in God. And he told me that, and I really got upset, because I was like, now I got to ask the Lord about you. And I told him that, and I told him about how I had to ask the Lord about the other brothers, and how the Lord said, no, they weren't my husband, so now I have to ask him about you, and now this is going to mess up our relationship. I'm no longer going to be able to talk to you on the phone and stuff, because now we breached our friendship. Like, it's never going to go back to the same way. And I was just all frustrated, and he was just looking at me like, really? So I'm asking the Lord right there while he's standing there. Inwardly, I'm asking the Lord, like, is this my husband? And do you know, the Lord went mute. Now, all them other brothers, I heard the Lord so clearly, loudly say, no. And it literally scared me and shook me up till I had to tell the brothers, the Lord said, you're not my husband. I can't go to lunch or dinner with you, and I will walk away. Well, this time, I hear nothing. The Lord went mute on me. And over the years, I understood what that was. It's to know that God has not left me. He's still with me. And I had to learn that in different tests and trials, growing in God. But after that, I told him, I said, the Lord is not telling me nothing, but because you're a minister in the church, I know he talks to you. So I asked the Lord, are we meant to be together, and so we can like squash this and be done with this, because I can't waste my time with you. The Lord said he's going to bring me my husband. So I'm telling him all this, and I'm like, and let me know what you hear when we see each other next Sunday. So he comes back to church, and we're on auxiliary because we're about to, we're on the altar evangelist team, And we're standing there, and I'm asking him, like, what did the Lord say? And he said, he hasn't told me anything. And I'm like, he hasn't told me nothing either. So all of a sudden, the president of the auxiliary comes over, and she points at him, and she said, you know who your wife is. And then she points at me, you know who your husband is, and walked away. And I looked at him and I said, you told her? And he said, no, did you tell her? And I'm like, no. And that was when the Lord showed me who my husband was. And it was 2 weeks later, he proposed to me, and I became his wife. And 30 years later. So that's the introduction. I'm going to keep going from there. This is just the introduction, and I just want you to follow me, because this story is going to really surprise you, and you might be able to find yourself in a lot of things that I went through in my 30 years of marriage, in my walk with God, in raising kids, and all of that. So you be blessed, and hope to see you soon. Bye.